Right, what is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Business Foundations in a Changing World. In this video, we're going to be going over chapter 2, and that is going to be everything related to business ethics and social responsibility, from your own personal ethics and personal views to what society and the culture that you live in thinks and social responsibility. Okay, so let's take a look at, or let's start with business ethics. Okay, so what business ethics means is these are different principles and standards that determine acceptable conduct in business. Now, someone might ask me, who's the one that makes them acceptable or not? And in this case, obviously, it's a mix of a lot of people, right? So you have customers, what the customers think, your other competitors, interest groups, the public in general, society, your individual principles and what you believe in. Okay, so all of these are, if all these people, deem whatever you want to do as acceptable or is accepted where you live, then it's generally okay. But if it's not, then it is perhaps unethical. Okay, and that is going to be, again, determined, again, like a lot of unethical decisions are going to be unethical in many different countries. However, there are some things that are, they might be unethical in a country, but completely ethical in another country. So that is something that you have to, it takes a little bit of experience to get used to, but you get it in time when you start working for a company or for a business in general. Okay, so let's start with some of the business ethics. One is trust. Now we have different aspects of trust. Obviously, in business, trust is the glue that holds relationships together, whether that relationship is between two companies, two managers, two business owners trying to start a business together. If there is no trust, everything will fall eventually. Okay? Now, I wanted to touch on this final point here. Trust in banks is lower than in other industries except for media and government. Now, what does that mean? Obviously, when you go to get a mortgage out, for example, the bank doesn't really trust you because the banks need to make sure that they get their money back. So there's a system called credit, right? So if your credit is below a certain number, that means that you usually don't pay back what you take from the bank. So you take out loans, but you don't pay them back in time, right? So how do you convince the bank that, hey, I actually pay my debt on time? Can you give me this mortgage so I can use it as down payment, for example, or so I can use it to get out of a midlife crisis that I'm having? Okay, something came up and I need this money right now. So in order to do this, there's something called a credit card. If you guys, I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with a credit card. So you take out money, right? That this is not your money, this is money from the bank, but you make sure that you pay it on time every month, and eventually your credit score goes up. And the higher your credit score, the better your chances are of getting more and more loans and obviously higher numbers. Okay, so credit score is the number one it's the number one reason why some people can't buy houses, can't take out loans, is because the banks simply don't believe them when they say, hey, I'm going to pay you back. They need proof, and one of those is obviously credit. Okay, let's keep going. We have tone at the top, managers. Okay, so managers must show a strong commitment to ethics and compliance. I mean, if the manager himself is not really ethical and compliant, then everything else under him is going to start falling and they'll follow the same pattern, and it becomes a toxic workplace, right? Where everything is done with bribery and other stuff that I'll talk about later in this episode. Okay, now what happens, or what managers should do, is they should acknowledge that their role is quite high. So whatever they do is going to be a good example for their lower employees. Same thing goes with supervisors, right? Your employee sort of looks up to you, obviously not in a kid way, but in a way that they see the way you work, especially if it's like someone fresh out of college and they develop their own decision making based on how you work as a manager or as a supervisor. Okay, so for managers, it says create strong relationships with ethics and compliance department, right? Okay, so by creating strong relationships, you build trust. And as we said before, trust is the glue to all business relationships. Clearly communicate expectations for ethical behavior to all employees. Now, some employees, like we said, might look up to you, but not everybody's the same. You'll always have bad employees. You'll always have people that engage in unethical behavior. So unless you clearly communicate expectations and tell them what'll happen if they engage in such unethical behavior, they're not really going to listen to you. So you have to clearly communicate your expectations and what happens for those that, do not follow the rules, if you will. Educate other managers and supervisors about the ethics policies. Again, it's pretty simple. You as a manager or a supervisor, you should already know about the ethical policies in your place or workplace or business in general. Train managers/employees on what to do if an ethics crisis occurs. Now, this is very important right here. The business can go really well for the most part, but sometimes things get out of control, right? It can happen to any business. So you got to be able to train other managers, whether lower or employees that are lower than managers, to know how to stay calm and what to do if something actually does happen regarding something unethical actually ends up happening. We don't want to turn into we don't want to turn into a toxic workplace where everybody starts blaming each other and starts playing games instead of focusing on the problem at hand, which is how to deal with this crisis right now so we can go back to work. Okay? Now let's go to social responsibility. Okay, so for social responsibility when it comes to business is its obligation to maximize positive impact on society and, have as little negative impact on society as possible. Okay? Now, this is highly, how do I say this? Everyone has their own opinion on how does a business positively impact society. I mean, look at older people, and I mean no hate or disrespect to any older people or older folks watching this, by the way. A lot of older people, especially really old people, they go and they think that, hey, video games are not exactly the best for our youth, right? Those are members of society as well. Okay, so youth make up a huge portion of society, and a lot of older folks think that, hey, this business has a negative impact on society. And then you have youth on the other hand, or younger people that say, hey, no, that's not true. This helps us, play, have fun. Instead of we could be doing drugs, but instead we're playing video games. So they think that it's a positive impact, and the negative impact is a lot lower than adults or older folks think. So there's a bit of a gray area, and you as an employee have to distinguish between the two based on where you live, whether that's whether it's socially acceptable, whether it's not. All of these are things that you get with time and experience. Okay, so social responsibility and ethics differ. Okay, so there's quite the difference between social responsibility and ethics, believe it or not. So ethics refers to the decisions made by an individual, so that's you, or a simple work group that society evaluates as right or wrong. So a decision, you might be like, okay, look, I'm going to make this decision. Me personally, I believe it's right. Just a simple decision, okay? But society, where you live, says, hey, this is wrong. Then that is an unethical decision, regardless of what you think, okay? Now, social responsibility, on the other hand, refers to the impact of the entire organization's activities on society. And we gave the example of video game companies, for example, right? So the difference is ethics, again, it refers to the decision that you make as an individual and what society thinks of it, while social responsibility is the impact that the business has on society. Okay? Let's move to the role of ethics in business. So we have current trends, growing concern that legal and ethical issues in business strengthen the public's perceptions that ethical standards and the level of trust in business need to be raised. Okay, so there are a lot of legal and ethical issues in business. It's been known for a while now. Now, how do you combat an issue like this? Well, you start by strengthening the public's perceptions of what ethical standards are and the level of trust needed inside the business itself. They need to be raised, okay? Because if the level of trust is quite low, then people are going to screw each other over and trust becomes almost non-existent. And like we said, trust is a glue. So everything goes down to hell from there. Okay? Learning to recognize and resolve ethical issues is a key step in evaluating ethical decisions. So for you to be able to recognize and resolve ethical issues regardless of what you think of it is obviously a very important step in, evaluating what ethical decisions actually are and how to deal with them in the long run. Okay? Legal and ethical issues are not limited to for-profit organizations. It can also happen in places like sports organizations as well, right? Obviously, politicians, something as simple as a politician lying to get to the top and then not keeping good on his promise, that is unethical, obviously, and you lose trust. Okay? And also, this can affect an organization's ability to build relationships in the future, whether that's with other politicians or with the public in general. Okay? Let's go to recognizing ethical issues. So ethical issues is basically an ethical issue is a problem, situation, or an opportunity that requires you as an individual to choose from among several actions, that may be evaluated as right or wrong, whether that's ethical or unethical in this case. Okay? So an ethical issue, like we said, again, it might be an opportunity to screw someone over, but hey, you get better pay in your job, right? Or if it's a situation where you do something for someone, but hey, it involves money under the table, if you will, right? So all of these are called ethical issues. Now, recognizing ethical issues is the most important step in understanding business ethics. For you to be able, like we said, to understand and recognize when these ethical issues arise is the most important step to understand business ethics in general. Okay, let's talk about some of these issues here, if you will. So we have one, bribery. Bribery is basically payments, gifts, or special favors intended to influence the outcome of a decision. We've seen it happen before. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what bribery is. So you pay someone, whether through actual money, gifts, or simply special favors here and there in order to influence the decision that someone higher than you is going to make, right? So for example, let me give you an example. A manager has two employees. One is closer than the other to the manager, like he's, I'll say, a closer friend. So he decides to one day swing by, give him gifts for like 2 days in a row, and then give him payments, but not really saying, hey, I'm going to need you to, promote me instead of him. Basically, what that employee is trying to do is influence the outcome of a decision, and that is called bribery. Okay, many business issues seem easy to resolve on the surface, but in reality are very complex. Okay, so experience with the culture in which a business operates in is critical to understanding what is ethical or unethical. Like we said, you have to understand the culture that you live in. Put your issues and beliefs aside for a second. Look at the culture around you. If you think that something is ethical, but society, for a fact that society would not tolerate it, then it's best for you to stay away from said option at all, unless you absolutely have to, which is not the case. Okay? So one of the principal causes of unethical behavior in organizations is overly aggressive financial or business objectives. Okay, so you'll see some managers obviously go so hard. They're like, we want to reach business objectives by this, by this, by this. And sometimes they get demoralized because they simply cannot reach said goals as quickly as they thought they would. And when this behavior repeats over and over, instead of changing dates, they start cutting corners. We know about this a lot, right? Whether that's in engineering, for example, or programming, right? Where people just cut corners so they can finish a task quickly, so they could keep going. And hey, that's a business objective complete. Or the overly aggressive, financial standpoint from many managers and business owners, where they try so hard to make their business work even more and aggressive. They try their best to make more and more money that, hey, they lose hindsight of the business in the first place, which is, make money at a reasonable pace. You can't force a business to make more money. That happens on its own. Okay? So again, well, the principal causes of unethical behavior could be because of two main areas. That's, going over business objectives too quickly, which causes cutting corners, causes, managers and business owners to cut corners, or people getting greedy and wanting more money and their business to do, so well, but that's not really something that you can control. Okay. Now let's talk about some of the unethical behavior that something that you guys are probably familiar with. We have misuse of company time. Now, company time is, your 8 hours from 9 to 5, right? Your work day, 7, 8 hours. You know, no one works 8 hours. I believe that. Like, I personally believe that no one works the whole 8 hours. Like, there's gonna be at least like half an hour or an hour of you not working at all at work. And that is something called theft of time. And it's a common area of misconduct, right? You'll find this everywhere you go. When you start working, you'll find this in any workplace. People are not going to be working the whole 7 or 8 hours. And although, again, this is my opinion, this is subjective, many employees think that, hey, if I can get, how do I say this? If I can get, 8 hours of work done in 6, then I deserve the last 2 hours. And although I don't disagree with this, I think that that work should be spread evenly throughout the day so that, hey, it's kind of infuriating for you as a boss or a manager to walk by your employees and seeing one just simply watching YouTube or sitting on personal email or talking to his wife on the phone. So I think it's best if you, try to balance work throughout the day instead of finishing all of it, in 1 or 2 hours and then just doing nothing at all. And some people, regarding what I just said, do engage in something unethical, which is they finish all the work, but instead of telling people that they finished all their work, they act like they still have that work. They still need work to be done, although they finished it like a couple hours ago, so they're just chilling. Again, unethical. You might believe it's okay, it's good, it's fine, but I think everybody knows that it's not. Okay. Now, just the fact here, time theft costs are estimated to cost companies hundreds of billions of dollars annually. Okay, so that's misuse of company time. Again, something that we see often in different workplaces is abusive and intimidating behavior. We have something called bullying. Okay, so I'll give you an example before I read the slide here. Recently, I read a story. It was on social media, and it was this girl, right? She was quite young, and she just started working. But after like about a year of working, a mom of 3, called her, and she was like, "Can you fill in for me? Can you take my shift?" And it was a weekend shift. Obviously, the girl was like, "No, I'm staying home. I'm chilling for the weekend. I don't want to." Obviously, the mother starts criticizing her on how you don't have children, so you're free. You're using this time to have fun. Hey, you should come and fill in for me. Again, the girl says, "Sorry, but no, my time is mine, and I should not be obligated to come to work when I don't want to." She goes to work on Monday, and hey, she gets bullied and belittled, harassed, verbally abused simply because she refused, to take the job or the shift of a mom of 3. And people started calling her, "Hey, how dare you? She's a mom. She doesn't have, the father doesn't help the kids." Moral of the story is there was a lot of bullying involved. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So that is called a toxic or hostile workplace. And that is when a person or group is targeted and is threatened, harassed, belittled, verbally abused, and overtly criticized in that workplace. Okay? Now, abusive or intimidating behavior is the most common ethical problem for employees, like we just said in the example. Okay? And active use of this bullying can make said employee, have low self-esteem, doesn't want to work there, depression, all of these symptoms start showing up over time. Okay. Here are some actions that are associated with bullies in the workplace. Spreading rumors to damage others, right? Let's back to our example. That mom could have went behind the girl's back and said, "Hey, that girl doesn't want to help me," and she spreads extra rumors with a lot of fake and drama just to steer things up. So, again, not cool. Blocking others' communication in the workplace, flaunting status or authority to take advantage of others. "Hey, I'm higher than you. You're here, I'm here." You get the idea. Discrediting others' ideas and opinions. Using email to demean others. Failing to communicate or return communication. Again, this is something that a lot of people use when they hate an employee, right? They act like they don't see their WhatsApp message or their email, and problems start to occur, and yeah, insults get thrown around, yelling, shouting. But that's like when things get a little too far. Again, using terminology to discriminate by gender, race, or age. You see a lot of older folks, criticize younger folks for not having enough experience, and a lot of younger folks, they discriminate older people for not keeping up with the times and technology. It's sort of quite the battle, if you will. Using eye or body language to hurt others or their reputation, and finally, taking credit for others' work or ideas. This one hurts the most, in my personal opinion, taking credit for others' work or ideas. So imagine working for like hours and hours trying to build an idea for work, and then someone, hey, takes the credit for all of it. That's gotta sting. Okay? Now let's take a look at misuse of company resources. Misuse of company resources have been identified as a leading issue in observed misconduct in organizations. So what does misuse of company resources mean? I mean, you as an employee, you are a company resource. So misuse of company resources here are things like something like the company machine when it comes to the company printer, for example, right? You as an employee spending way too much time, hey, talking to your friend on the phone instead of getting work done. Submitting personal expenses on company reports. This one's a little bit higher, but there are actually people that do this. So they submit personal expenses on company reports so that the business ends up paying for, their personal wants and needs. Many companies have implemented official policies, for what is acceptable use of company resources. Okay, so like I personally don't think that using the company copier for personal use is that bad. But if you're like printing books every day of the week, just I don't 24/7, I think that becomes a problem, and that is misuse of company resources. So many companies, like we said, have started implementing official policies, on what you can do and what you cannot do with company resources. Okay. Let's keep going. Now let's move on to something called conflict of interest. So conflict of interest is something that exists when a person must choose, between advancing his or her own personal interests or those of others. Okay? So do you want to choose your own personal interest or that of others? So that is something that's called conflict of interest. Like, let me give you an example here. How do I go about this? Like, for example, you know that if you work, you'll get a promotion, but you know that the whole workplace is going to be against you, so you choose not to pursue that promotion simply because you're afraid of what might happen when you end up getting it. Now, obviously, this is just out of my mind right now. I'm not. This is not true at all. Like, it's just I'm giving you an example, if you will. Okay. So to avoid something like this, employees must be able to separate their personal financial interests from their business dealings, right? So your personal financial goals are yours, obviously, but when dealing with or when working business, you're going to see a lot of money, and you have to, obviously avoid, like we said, it was right here, actually, again, submitting things like personal expenses on company reports. Okay. Let's go to fairness and honesty for employees. Again, this is just some points that all employees must go by. So abide by the laws, cause no harm through dishonesty. We already said that trust is very important. Use company resources fairly and honestly. Be aware of company policies and recognize ethical behavior. And this last one comes with experience over time. You recognize ethical behavior, and you recognize when someone wants to engage in unethical behavior with you. Excuse me. Now, we have something called fairness and honesty for companies. Now, it goes both ways. So you can't have fairness and honesty from employees, but you try to rip them off as a company. It has to go both ways, or either trust fails, like we said, when trust goes down, things hit the fan, and over time the business goes down as well. So companies must use fair competition practices, give full disclosure of potential harm by product. So if a certain product is harmful in any way, shape, or form, they have to give full disclosure so that employees know what they're getting themselves into. Again, be truthful in advertising. This one, a lot of companies don't actually follow this, believe it or not. A lot of companies are not truthful when it comes to advertising, or at least they don't lie, but they don't show you the whole truth, if you will. Keep company secrets. Obviously, not everything that the company has should be out in the public. Meet certain obligations and responsibilities. You can't just be, hey, going with the business left and right. You have to have an actual plan, obligations, and other responsibilities. And avoid undue pressure forcing others to act unethically, right? We as humans are social creatures, right? So, hey, although I think something is unethical, if I get tempted by enough people, I'll eventually do the said unethical decision. So me as a company, I should avoid that pressure from building up to a certain employee or to one employee in the first place, okay? Now let's go to fairness and honesty. Plagiarism. So plagiarism is taking someone else's work and presenting it as your own without mention of the source is another ethical issue. And this is mostly seen, believe it or not, in essays for college, right? Or when you're making your thesis. A lot of people they write things down from the internet, but they don't mention the source whatsoever. This is an ethical issue. This is unethical, right? You're stealing someone else's work and ideas and claiming it as your own. And obviously here we have an example, Turnitin. That's a website. It's an internet service that allows teachers to determine if their students have plagiarized content. Okay? Making decisions about ethical issues. So it can be difficult to recognize specific ethical issues, especially when people word it a little bit differently, but you gain experience and you're able to look at things from different perspective once you have a few years of experience under your belt. And people often need years of experience to accurately recognize and react to ethical situations. Okay. Questions to help determine if an action is ethical. Okay, so start with the last point here first. So how does this activity that you're about to do fit with your own beliefs and values? If you believe that it is wrong, then stop doing it immediately. Okay? Like, you don't want to do it at all if it doesn't fit with your own values and standards. If you believe that, hey, it's fine, it's not that big of a deal, then before doing it, you gotta go through these 4 different points. So are there any potential legal restrictions or violations that could result from the action? So can I get in any legal issues, or am I violating any policies or company policies by doing said action? Does your company have specific codes of ethics or code of ethics or policy on said action? Is this activity customary in your industry? So do you see it a lot? Are there any industry trade groups that provide guidelines or codes of conduct that address this issue if yours doesn't? Would this activity be accepted by your coworkers? Will your decision or action withstand open discussion with coworkers in meetings and such with managers and survive untarnished? If all of these are good, then hey, go ahead. It's an ethical decision. But if any of these do not align with your decision, then hey, I believe it's unethical. And the decision is obviously up to you in the end. Okay. 3 factors that influence business ethics. Excuse me. Individual standards and values. Again, like we said, your own standards and values. Many employees use different ethical standards at work than they do at home. A lot of people, believe it or not, some are ethically better, if that makes sense, at work than they do at home. They're a lot more tolerant at home, but not when it comes to work. Other people, on the other hand, are very ethical towards, their children, for example, and they wouldn't do anything in front of them, but when it comes to work, they do what they got to do to make bread, as younger people say it, or make money. Managers and coworkers influence. Okay, so activities and examples set by managers and coworkers are critical in gaining consistent ethical compliance. Like I said before, employees are going to be looking up to you as managers and as supervisors. So if they see you engaging in unethical decisions left and right, things are going to fall for you as a business owner. Okay? Opportunity, codes, and compliance requirements. If a company fails to provide good examples and direction, confusion and conflict will eventually develop. Just what we said. Okay? Code of ethics. So code of ethics is basically rules and standards that describe what a company expects of its employees. Okay, so when you start working, they're going to give you a code of ethics, and these are simply the rules that what the company expects from you as an employee. So employees must have established ethics policies to determine what conduct is acceptable, what is not. Codes and policies on ethics encourage the creation of an ethical culture in the economy. So, the economy, or sorry, not the economy, the company itself becomes a lot more ethical, if you will, right? So codes and policies on ethics encourage the creation of an ethical culture in the company, not economy. I'm sorry about that. Okay? So you as a business, you're trying to build an ethical culture inside the company itself and not rely on people's own beliefs, if you will. Okay? Because people are different, right? Everybody has their own personality, their own traits. So you gotta build an ethical culture. People, like we said, are social creatures. Humans are social creatures. So if they see ethical decisions, they're gonna feel bad when they do unethical ones and eventually stop if they even start. Enforcement of ethical codes and policies through rewards and punishments increases the acceptance of ethical standards by employees. Okay, now this is all good what we just said here. So codes and policies on ethical culture. So it's good to encourage people, but some people just won't budge. So in this case, you gotta give rewards to those that actually do not violate those ethical codes and policies. And for those that do, you give them punishments, whether that's not paying them, whether that's, hey, you were supposed to make a percentage off of this, but because of that unethical decision, hey, we're not giving you that. Okay, so these are punishments or rewards are a great way, for employees to abide by your laws or ethical codes and policies in general. Okay? Why a code of ethics is important. Okay, it alerts employees about important issues and risks to address. Right, it provides values such as integrity, transparency, honesty, and fairness that gives the foundation for building an ethical culture. It gives guidance to employees when facing gray or ambiguous situations or ethical issues that they have never faced before. So obviously, if you're in a little bit of a gray area, which happens when you're at work, sometimes it happens, having that code of ethics behind your back gives you a better idea on how to solve it. Okay, instead of making a mistake and getting punished for it, no, a code of ethics gives you a better idea on how to face the situation, if you will. It also alerts employees to systems for reporting or places to go for advice when facing an ethical issue. Okay, so it gives employees a chance to also, hey, I'm seeing something going down that I don't exactly like. I have a system where I can go to report and see what's up with this ethical issue. 5, it helps establish uniform ethical conduct and values that provides a shared approach to dealing with ethical decisions. 6, serves as an important document for communicating to the public, suppliers, and regulatory authorities about the company's values and compliance. And finally, it provides the foundation for evaluation and improvement of ethical decision making. Again, all of these are related to how employees go about ethical decisions and how to implement in their minds that, hey, ethical decisions are actually good in the long run for the business instead of, the short-term money that you as an employee might get from unethical business decisions. Okay? Finally, we have something called whistleblowing. And when someone whistleblows, he is called a whistleblower. Okay, so whistleblowing in general is an act of an employee exposing an employer's wrongdoing to outsiders like the media or government regulatory agencies. Okay, so let's say me, I'm an employee, I go to work every day, but I'm quite close to my manager or employer, and I see him every day doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing, whether that's, money laundering, fraud. We're talking all the way up top here. So for me, I don't like what I see, but I can't risk, going up and telling him that this is bad. I'll be fired on the spot. So what do? I become a whistleblower. If I have morals and values that tell me, hey, I don't want to work here anymore, I'm going to be a whistleblower, right? So let's take a look at the points here. One of the most important components of an ethics program is a means through which employees can report observed misconduct anonymously, okay? So Having a program in business where employees can go and feel safe to talk about, hey, I saw this guy doing this anonymously greatly helps us as a business catch employee or employer in this case and see what he's doing legally. Okay, because when you're a whistleblower, things are probably, things go from unethical to straight up illegal. Okay? More companies are establishing programs to encourage employees to report illegal or unethical practices internally. Okay? More companies want employees to actually come forward and report illegal and unethical practices. And what else do we have? Improving ethical behavior in business. The current trend is to move away from legally based ethical programs to cultural or integrity based programs that make ethics a core organizational value. Okay, so what's going on right now is the companies are like, hey, instead of legally forcing ethical programs into people, we want to make it a little bit more cultural, right? So that people actually respect said ethical values. Okay? Effective business ethics programs are good for business performance. This is, again, like we said, in the long run, having ethical decisions is much better than doing unethical ones and getting caught. That is not to say do unethical ones and don't get caught, because you almost certainly will in the long run if you keep doing it. Firms that develop higher levels of trust function more efficiently and effectively and avoid damaged company reputations and product images. Okay, so like we said, again, it all comes down to trust. So trust is the glue. So firms that develop higher levels of trust, they function a lot more efficiently and effectively, and they avoid, damaging the company's name and, the product itself, because no one is shady in the business or among employees. Okay, so that was chapter 2, you guys. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.